Okay, welcome everyone to this session. This is a first year seminar class at Butler University in sustainability and climate. And we have a number of students here and a couple of my colleagues as well, all to hear from Clive Wilson. I happened upon Clive's book, Designing the Purposeful World, about a year ago when I was in Denmark, actually, trying to do a little initial research on the topics for this class. And I read the book and I was impressed by it, and he made the mistake of inviting people to contact him in the book. So I looked him up on LinkedIn and contacted him, and he has graciously agreed to talk with our group today about the general issue of sustainability and living in a world that needs to address a lot of issues as represented by the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, so I've had all the students and attendees look at your LinkedIn page, so they kind of know your background as an engineer and then later as a people person in business organization and a consultant. And we're eager to hear what you have to say to us today. So thanks and welcome, Clive.
Thank you so much, Bill, and it's a great pleasure to be joining you today from the UK. Good afternoon, because that's what it is where you are, I believe. It's evening here in Harrogate in Yorkshire in the north of England. And as Bill said, the book that he read was this one, I think, Bill, yes? Designing the Purposeful World, which was a sequel to one I wrote a few years earlier, which was Designing the Purposeful Organization. The story behind these books is I wrote this one first, which was to help organizations align to a compelling purpose and to create the conditions that it would be delivered in. And in the last chapter, I wrote one of those throwaway comments that people write, which is, you could actually apply these principles to the whole world. And then, so that was, I wrote that chapter in November 2014. And at Christmas time, a colleague put a paper on my desk, which was the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals first draft, or one of the early drafts anyway. And I read the SDGs, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and I was just blown away. I thought, well, that is the vision that I can buy into. So that's why I had to write the Designing the Purposeful World book, which has the subtitle of the UN Sustainable Development Goals as a blueprint for humanity. And I've been spending the last 8 years or so engaging with groups of people, talking about the book, but mainly talking about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I always start with asking them what sort of a world they'd like to see. And we're going to do the same with you in a few minutes. And actually, I discovered that people in general just want to see a brighter future, whatever that means. And so that got me thinking, and particularly now that we're in 2023, the horizon for the SDGs is 2030. We're starting to think what comes next. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So let me share my screen, and I'll take you through the slides. As Bill said, by all means, use the chat for questions, or you can put them into Slido when we get there. If you're really desperate, shout out. I don't mind, but there is a lot of material to go through first, so maybe a Q&A session at the end will be a good plan. So I'm sharing the screen now. Let's give you screen 2, which is that. So just, can I check that you can see that? Fantastic. Yeah. I'm getting a thumbs up from Bill and Blake. Fantastic. So the new book, which I'm writing at the moment, it isn't published yet, so don't go looking for it on Amazon just yet. But next year, it should be published by Routledge, as long as my publishing editor approves of what I've written. And the book is Leading Beyond Sustainability. And my working subtitle is 6 Aspirations for a Brighter Future. And I've put a little phrase on that opening slide there. It's fairly small type, so I'll read it. It's every time we notice, encourage, and celebrate someone who is changing the world, we are changing the world. You know, we're not all going to be the Elon Musks of the world or the people that are inventing wonderful technology to take us to a brighter future. Some of us will just be admiring or encouraging or investing or whatever it is we do. It's a complex system that makes people change the world. And in my experience, most people in the world of work are indeed already working to make the world a better place. So let's just take a look at that. And I'd like you to, if you can, just close your eyes just for a minute or two. And I want you to imagine a brighter future. Just what would that look like? Look into the future to a fairly realistic paradise. What would it look like? Just close your eyes and imagine that. You can go anywhere you like in the world, into the jungle or a city, to the bottom of the ocean, anywhere you like. And if you see people using technology, what's that all about? If you see life in the wilderness, what's going on there? How are people going about their days? What do you see in their faces? And I see some of you have already figured out Slido, which is fantastic. So all you've got to do for the uninitiated is point your smartphone at the QR code at the top left-hand corner. You'll get a little opportunity to open a web page, which has got the equivalent of what's on the screen there. And I'd like you to just put as much as you like in about what your brighter future looks like. You can put as many entries in as you like, half a dozen, 20 if you like. And I would encourage you to do something that sounds a bit weird, but listen with your eyes. Listen with your eyes. Look at what other people are putting into the word cloud there. If you see something that you agree with and somebody just has, then if you start typing that out, you'll get the opportunity to enter the same that they did. So if somebody else is wanting lots of smiles, start typing smiles and it'll give you the chance to put it in again. Keep them all coming. This is wonderful. You're so good, you are. So at the moment, this is saying that this is coming mainly from 4 people. So the rest of you, try and get your cameras out and get putting it in. A clean world, forests being saved. This is fantastic stuff. No corruption, more equality, no political animosity. Wow, that's so powerful right at the moment, isn't it? Common goal, peaceful race relationships. Yeah, keep it coming. As long as they're coming, I'm going to let it run. And if anybody wants to take a photograph of what's going on the screen, feel free to do so and save it for posterity. A combined goal. I love that. That's really the whole essence of what this is all about. Us all feeling as though we're pulling in the same direction instead of different directions. The idea of community, unity among people. Wow, you guys are amazing. Peace. Yeah. Less endangered species. Just more species, full stop, eh? No more animal extinction. Well, they're still coming. Again, I encourage you to listen with your eyes. If you see something on there and you think, yeah, I'd like to see that, start typing it. We'll see where the emphasis is. Equal opportunity for all. Yeah, we've got community and stronger community. No homelessness. Clean water. Clean energy. Clean oceans. Clean everything, really. Wow. I hope you're taking a photograph of this, Bill, for future classes. Fantastic. No corruption. Well, we'll just give it one more minute and then I'm going to move on. You can still enter things even after I move on. They'll still get into the poll. But yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Just quickly take a look at what's on there. And having done that, think of this statement. To smash their target, the martial artist doesn't aim for the target itself. They visualize the space beyond. So have you ever seen these wonderful karate black belts who try to break a block of stone or a piece of wood? And I'm led to believe, I've never tried it myself, but I'm led to believe that the way you do that is you aim beyond the obstacle to the other side and you go through it. If you aim for the obstacle itself, you end up breaking the bones in your hand. And really, that got me thinking about sustainability. You know, quite rightly, there are millions of people around the world focused on solving some of the awful problems that we face, whether it's violence or climate change, poverty, hunger. You know, these are the problems that are to do with sustainability. And they're reflected really in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and many of them are actually expressed almost as a double negative, things like no hunger, no poverty, things like that. And so what I wanted to do was to take the data that I've been asking this question of people like yourselves for 8 years now, and I've spoken with tens of thousands of people across 4 continents, and of ages from 7 to over 70, you know, kids in primary schools to retirees, and they all say more or less the same thing. And think about what you put in the word cloud and compare it to these 6 aspirations for a brighter future. So just take a minute to soak those in, let them sink in. I think I saw in your word cloud words that fitted under these 6 headings. And so we've got peace, which I think of as no war, none at all, and declining levels of violence. I put declining levels because, you know, it's how we define violence, and we get more ambitious as time goes on. And then there's connection, which is all about physical connection, like the internet, communication systems, mobile phones, but also collaboration, but compassion, love, and kindness. You know, so we want a more connected world where we're almost thinking and acting as one. Abundance, and again, you said it when you were talking about no hunger and so on, but an abundance of food, water, energy, services, and wealth, enough for everybody to lead their best lives. And vitality is an interesting one because is it vitality? Is it health of people? And for me, it's the whole lot. It's the well-being of people, all of life, and the planet that we live in. So all of that comes under vitality. And the one there in the bottom in the middle there, wisdom, to do things in the right way at the right time at the right and at the right time, the right thing, the right way, and the right time. And that is so important. And particularly when you look around the world and leaders in government, you know, if we had wise leaders, how different would the world be? And I'm not seeking to judge anybody in saying that, but the more wisdom we have in leadership, the better the world is, in my humble opinion. And finally, opportunity for learning, growth, and contribution. So exactly what you're doing here, learning, education, but also the way we manage careers and the way we make the world a place where people can bring the best of who they are, whether they're artists, musicians, scientists, writers. You know, if we can make a world where people can bring the best of themselves into play to make our future a brighter one, then that is fantastic. Now, I'm going to go through those goals in a minute, but first of all, I'd just like to show you the analysis that I did with the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that are featured in my book, Designing the Purposeful World. And you can see there the 6 aspirations down the left just by symbols, and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So, for example, things like abundance, the one with the 6 goals attached: no poverty, zero hunger, clean water and sanitation, the energy, industry, infrastructure, responsible consumption. All of that, to me, is under the big heading of abundance. And interestingly, notice the aspiration there at the bottom, which is wisdom, that doesn't have any of the Sustainable Development Goals mapped against it. And yet, to me, it was so important, I couldn't leave it out. And the way I like to think of wisdom is it's like a thread that runs through all 17. But it's also worth, in my humble opinion, spending time to focus on it as an aspiration in of itself. And I also want people to think about the future and, what is happening in the world. We tend to look on the dark side of what is going on in the world, and it's largely to do with the way the news is reported. If there's a war somewhere, it'll be in the headlines. If there's a flood or a fire, it'll get in the headlines. Somebody invents a new technology or makes a breakthrough in progress, it may not even get there. But I'd like to draw your attention to these 3 books, and if you get the chance to read these, they are amazing. The first one, Rethinking Humanity, from the think tank RethinkX. You can get that, just go online and search for RethinkX, and you'll be able to download the book for free. It's about 60 or 70 pages by James Arbib and Tony Seba, the founders. And they have done some phenomenal research to say, okay, the world is being disrupted by things like the pandemic and climate change and wars, but it's also being disrupted by massive innovation in technology, in energy, in information systems, in transport, in food, and so on. And one of the things that they're pointing out is that these innovations will happen far quicker than most people think. And the reason for that is pure economics. When you start thinking about electric vehicles, we were talking about that before we came on here, and the way they're coming down in price. They started expensive, but now they're coming down in price, and they're going to be the cheapest vehicles on the planet if they're not already. And of course, when that happens, the old internal combustion engines become more expensive as they get displaced, and a transition happens. And the predictions are that in a decade from now, most of us probably won't even be owning cars, certainly not in places like the UK with our crowded streets and so on. We're probably going to be getting on our mobile phones, if we still have them, and calling up an autonomous vehicle which just peers outside our house, and we get in it. And one of the reasons for that is it'll reduce the numbers of vehicles on the road considerably, because these vehicles will be built to do 1 million miles during their lifetimes, and the only way to get the value out of that is to run them most of the time when they're not charging. Steven Pinker, this is an amazing book. He's another American. I'm afraid I'm citing more Americans than English people here, but Steve Pinker at Harvard Business School is an amazing man. And I first got interested in Pinker when I wrote Designing the Purposeful World, and looked at some of the things that he pointed out about the trends in violence and so on. And whereas we think the world is getting more and more violent, when you actually look at the data, then it might not be the case. I'll actually show you a graph or two in a few minutes. And the point here, it's not about optimism or pessimism, despite the fact that Adam Dorr in the next book talks about optimism. It's about checking the data. If we want to see what sort of world we're moving into in the coming decade, look at the data. I cannot encourage you to do that too much. Pinker goes to great lengths to explain why. And I just really encourage anybody on the planet to read that. It'll change your view on so many things. And finally, Adam Dorr, he's actually another one of the Rethink X team. And he's written this amazing book, Brighter, that goes into the future of environmentalism. And again, Adam Dorr is not calling for us to give up everything that we do in order to save the planet. He's talking about us using the technologies that are available to make the world a brighter place. And I commend those 3 books to any of you that are interested. So I'd like to now actually begin to go through each of the 6 aspirations one at a time. And what I want to do is show you 1 or 2 bits of data that show you the way the world is moving. Not too much. I'm not putting everything that's in the book here because we've only got an hour or so together. But I'd also like to show you some of the case studies. When I started writing this book, I thought I'll get loads of case studies of some of the amazing things that are going on in the world. When I started to think about it, I realized just how many people I knew were working hard to deliver these 6 aspirations, people I knew. So these are not the people that are famous that you will all know. These are people I know. The power of this is that we all know people who are changing the world. And by sharing you some of the intimate stories of my own, I encourage you, when you read the book, to think of who you know that is working, for example, to deliver the power of connection. So, first of all, let's look at a bit of data just to see which way the world is going. Look at that bottom curve, the number of internet users. We think the internet's been here forever. But, 1990, when I was working in the electricity industry, nobody had a computer. Nobody. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? And now, we've got to the point where there's almost as many internet users as there are people on the planet. And certainly by the time we get to the middle of the century, that will be the case. And if you look at social media, up till about 2008, social media wasn't even a thing. But look at that now, over 2 billion people using Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp. This is the way the world is connected. And the beauty of this means that whatever you want to know in the world now, it's at your fingertips. And with the advent of artificial intelligence, it won't just be information, it'll also be assembling it in useful ways. So just some little stories of people I know. So the 2 guys mentioned here, John Campbell, Phil Clothier, I'll give you a little story. It was about coming up to Christmas, December 2015, and I was walking to a park near our office in Harrogate. And I was with John Campbell and his phone rang. And the guy on the other end was Phil Clothier. All I heard John say was, "Just a minute, Phil, I'll ask him." And he put the phone down for a minute and he spoke to me. He said, "It's Phil on the phone. He's got a workshop at the United Nations in New York, and he wants to know if we can go across and help him facilitate." So I said, "When's the workshop?" He said, "It's in a fortnight or something like that." It was before Christmas. So we thought there's probably no chance, but we got our diaries out, which of course you can do. It's on your phone. We looked, and as it happened, we could go. A little bit of shuffling around. So John and I flew out to New York, went to the United Nations to facilitate for a youth action workshop at the United Nations. And the people that you're seeing there, the workshop was being run by an organization called ISEC. Some of you may even be members. It's the world's largest youth-led youth movement. And it's for young leaders to get together and learn about leaders. Now, the guy that you can probably pick out, I'll put my cursor over it if that works. There you go. This guy with the white T-shirt down at the front is Fede or Federico. I'm going to come back to him probably later on. You'll see this photograph again. But Fede was one of the people there. And to cut a long story short, as a result of that workshop, the people at ISEC took up a challenge to connect all the young people on the planet to the Sustainable Development Goals. And what you're seeing there is you'll see the little pictures of the goals and the famous SDG circle. And this is some of the young people that they engaged to grow awareness of the SDGs. And it's all about connection. That's the point. Imagine connecting to all the young people in the planet. Unbelievable. And this is a very different one. So Nick and Linda, this is a very personal story of two friends of ours. They live just around the corner from me. They're man and wife. Linda used to be a careers advisor, working with my wife, Frances, at Ripon Grammar School, not far away. And Linda got early onset dementia, and her dementia went downhill really, really fast. So much so she had to retire, and Nick also had to retire to look after her. Now, why is that about connection? We started to go to the pub with Nick. He got, it was actually the mother of his son's girlfriend came to look after Linda, and Nick got the chance to go to the pub on occasions for a very special hour with us. That was as long as he dared be away. And I asked him once, I said, Nick, what must it be like to devote your life to your wife like this, knowing that you have to do just about everything for her, and you never get out, you've had to retire, give up everything else? He said, yeah, he said, it's tough, but to be honest, it's given me a very special purpose in life. And now I'm also involved with dementia charities to help them raise awareness and to improve the well-being and healthcare for people who have got dementia, and that is something now that is part of my life. So we can see that connecting to purpose and through the things that we're interested in into bigger things is part of how the world goes round. And this again is another very special one. The guy in the left there, Neville Beavis, was actually the biology teacher of my son. And many years ago, I think it was about 20 years ago, Neville went out to Malawi, the poorest country in the world at the time, to run an infant's home for children that had been orphaned due to HIV/AIDS. And the little guy with the, let me go back again. The little guy with the dungarees here, with where my cursor is, if you can see it, I actually started to raise funds for Open Arms, and one thing led to another. And the next thing, I was in Malawi at the infant's home, and this guy came running across the yard and threw his arms around me. And he said, "Hello, I'm Wilson." And I said, "Wow, that's amazing. I'm Wilson as well. We must be brothers." And we formed a very special connection that has played out. He was 4 when that photograph was taken. He's now in his 20s, and I'm still in contact with him and helping him to kind of carve out his life and his career and destiny and so on. So, it just goes to show how connections that you have through your kids to the schools, to things they're interested in, that take you to another part of the world, and stuff happens, all sorts. And it's in the book. I ended up going to Malawi several times, even set up a business out there, ended up speaking at conferences out there. And that's just the nature of the world that we live in. So moving on to the second aspiration, the freedom of peace. And we think the world is more violent, but look at these deaths in state-based conflicts by world type, and you can get all this from the website Our World in Data. Now, admittedly, this stops at 2020, and we know what the world has been like in the last 3 years with everything that's going on in Ukraine and other places. And I put those blocks in there just to not hide the truth. And this was in April, as you can see, the top black box there. As many as 354,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers have been killed. And when you start to plot that on that graph, it makes a big blip. But the point is, and Steven Pinker with his book on rationality points this out, is that when it comes to violence and peace, when you plot it, it looks a little bit like the predictions on the stock market. They go up and down and up and down. But if you look for long enough, on the stock market, I'm told that if you invest for more than 10 years, you will get an average of a 4% rate of return. Don't take my word on that. I'm not a financial advisor, but that's the way things work. And look at this as well. You know, we think we live in a violent world today, but this is Europe, and homicide rates in Europe since the year 1300. And, you know, just look at that decline in homicide down to 2010 was the end point on that curve. So Pinker's thesis is really that the world is getting more and more peaceful. And I actually do believe that we are at a point where we could see world peace when we work out how to stop the wars that we're having now. And I think we will. Then we will turn a very, very different corner. And in terms of my personal encounters, Vijay Mehta is a man who, again, he read the same book that Bill did, and he invited me to speak at a conference in London. It was a peace conference. It's a few years ago. There's actually a video recording of what I had to say on my YouTube channel, if any of you care to have a look. And when I started to write this book, I thought I'll get in touch with Vijay and see what he's been up to. So I, through the power of LinkedIn, I found him. We got in touch, and he told me about his new book, How Not to Go to War. And again, without going into too much detail, such a simple idea as all governments having departments for peace. I mean, how simple is that? You know, we all have foreign offices and departments, you know, for war and armed forces, but something as simple as a department for peace that will look in advance to find conflict and step in and collaborate with compassion before we actually get there. And again, I cannot commend that book too highly. It's an absolutely brilliant book. I couldn't put it down when I started reading it. So another encounter, I told you about my trips to Malawi. Well, one of the men that I met in Malawi was Mark Jessel. At the time, he was the country director of the British Council in Malawi. And he engaged me to run a series of workshops in Southern Africa. I got to visit Botswana, Malawi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia. And then later he moved to Jordan, and he took me around the Middle East with him, speaking at conferences there. Mark Jessel now is the Chief Systems Integrity Officer with the Forestry Services Commission, which is a fantastic job. So what's that got to do with intercultural harmony? Well, I got Mark on a call the other day, and we were talking about this because his work with the British Council was all about intercultural harmony. He would work in countries and get different people from different religions together to talk about different topics. That's why we were talking about talent, just so that people would engage with each other. And in the Forestry Services Commission, he now also has to work globally around the world with all sorts of different communities, different nationalities, and also people with different agendas. You think about a forest, you know, there's the people that want to harvest the wood, there's the people that want to pursue leisure pursuits, the walkers, and all sorts, and making all that happen in a system of harmony is quite an achievement. The guy in the middle there is Owen Wibberley. He's one of my colleagues at Prime East, and Owen lived for many years in South Korea. In fact, he came back to England a couple of years ago with his South Korean wife and their two daughters, and he's now working with me in Harrogate. But because of his experience in intercultural matters, he now specializes in the measurement and management of culture. And the little graph there that you can see is the plotting of different cultures from different nationalities. And the fact that you can take diagnostics and measure that, and then work out how behaviorally you can fit in. For example, if you're going to go from America to China to work and you wanted to see where the conflicts may be, this diagnostic would tell you. And Jesse Rowell is one of the consultants at Aperion Global that make the diagnostic. And I had a wonderful conversation with Owen and Jesse on there, and that's on my YouTube channel as well, if anybody wants to read it. So I'm trying to whiz through these. I'm galloping at a rate of knots. And Bill, you have to tell me if I need to speed up. The third aspiration, the joy of vitality. And again, just think about it. is the world getting sicker, or are we having more well-being? We'll just look at life expectancy. Until just 100 or so years ago, people didn't expect 40 years. And now, at the weekend, I was around visiting my 96-year-old mother to take her dinner to her. And it's not uncommon, in countries like yours and ours, to have people living, even into over 100. And so some of the people that are working for a healthier world. Luke Bigwood, I first met when he worked at one of the sustainable energy generators, Good Energy, but he then transferred to the Environment Bank. In fact, I can see that I've made a spelling error there. It's not environment, it's Environment Bank. But Luke works for an organization, a relative new organization, that allows builders to buy credits for being net positive with the ecology and ecosystems, which is just such an innovative way of making sure that habitats are preserved and grown across the planet. Again, you can find them on the internet. I also had a conversation with him that's on my YouTube channel. And this one, Heath Jackson, I met when he was a consultant at KPMG. In fact, he was a senior partner, and I coached him for a while. And he left, and he started to support an organization that is going to send trees of lights. Can you imagine that? Have you ever heard of light trees? So branches of LEDs down into the darkest, most barren depths of the oceans to regenerate life in the oceans. Apparently, if you send LEDs down there, life happens. And the oceans then grow life, so food stocks get renewed, but also it starts to sequester carbon. So it's a way of mitigating climate change. Dr. Matt Walsh, we're getting into health for real now. And I was talking to Matt actually this afternoon. Matt was a CEO in the National Health Service in the UK. And he realized that if you want to cut down on the demand on the health service, you have to have healthy communities. So he started to do work working with communities, doing things like arts and sport and leisure, and just getting people in particularly poorer communities together. Because when you do that, guess what? There are fewer illnesses, and it cuts down demand on the health service. So I'm on to the fourth aspiration, the spirit of abundance. And again, is the world becoming more abundant? Well, certainly in terms of being well off. In 1820, 79% of the world's population was living in extreme poverty, compared with 9% today. And whichever stats you look at, yes, there may be bigger differences between the rich and poor, and that's still an issue. But in terms of more people being able to afford the basic necessities of life, we're moving in the right direction. And think about energy. These are the curves for renewable energy and electric vehicles and battery storage sales. Notice that they're exponential in terms of their growth. We're at the beginning of an S curve that is going to see the market saturated with these technologies. And again, this graph, if you can see it, is the growth of electric vehicles and also the vehicles that will be transport as a service, so autonomous vehicles that are ride-hailed, and also things like Uber, where you can just hail a car there. And by the time we get to 2030, we will have far more vehicles that are really hired from fleets rather than owned by individuals, according to the research from RethinkX. This one's really interesting, and apologies to anybody who's got families that are working in livestock and agriculture. This is looking at the cost curves for beef. So the cost of cow beef from the slaughterhouse is going to go up. And part of the reason for that is the advent of something called precision fermentation and clean beef, which is going to result, by the time we get to 2030, that those meat forms, which won't involve any slaughter of any animals, but it'll still be real meat from stem cells, is going to be about a tenth of the price. And just think what that will do to demand. Some theorists believe that it will clear pasture equal to the land area of 3 continents by the time we get, during this century. So just think about what that's going to do in terms of changing the world. So here's an interesting one. This lady, Susheta Jain, owns a company in the States with her husband, Shail Jain. They were clients of mine a year or 2 back. They design and make software for revenue collection. Now you might think, what's that going to do with abundance? Well, 2 things. If you make the collection of taxes efficient and easy and simple, then more taxes are collected, which makes it fairer on the system. It also means that communities and local governments can do more with the money, and it also means that the overall tax burden can be reduced across the population, thereby bringing your taxes down. So that's an interesting story. Mike Kay of Energy Oasis, it's a small business here in Harrogate. I did a bit of work for a couple of years ago, and basically what Mike and his team does is measure energy consumption and reduce it, for example, by putting LED lights on instead of sulfur lights, and on motion sensors and things like that. And he's been known to reduce, for example, in underground car parks, energy consumption by about 86%, with a massive saving of CO2 emissions in the process. They also do renewable solar energy and so on. He's a real climate hero in my view. And this guy, going from the high tech to the low tech, this is another man that I met in Malawi, Lawayo Biswick, or Biswick as he's known to his friends. He's a master of permaculture, and he runs this farm called Permaculture Paradise. And one by one, he's training all the farmers in Malawi to go with the ecology of nature and grow food in a country that has had frequent bouts of starvation. Biswick believes that there is abundant food available in the country if you just know how to work the ecology and to go with the natural flows of the ecosystems. And if you go on his Facebook page or website, the stories and the pictures of the food and the fruit forests that he's been growing is just amazing. 5th aspiration, infinite opportunity. So remember, we're talking about things like careers and education. So again, what's making all this happen? Well, part of it is the growth of democracy, and there's a graph, and also the growth in education. Look at literacy since 1800. The 90% of the population was illiterate, and now this is among people aged 15 and older, by the way. And now it's turned upside down. We've got most of the world's population is literate, and that's growing, by the year. And if you look as well, speaking of opportunity, and look at the growth in technology and goods, and how quickly these things get taken up today compared to earlier on in the century. Look at AI. This is a forecast of AI in the education market. So I thought this would be interesting of you, Bill, and your colleagues at the university. But look how AI is going to hit education over the coming years. We're at 2023 now. Look where it will be at 2030. So it's a massive opportunity to bring education to the populations of the world. The e-learning market by size, again, we're at the start of an exponential curve. Even things like YouTube. Look at this, the users of YouTube from just 2006, that's literally less than 20 years ago, to now we've got 2 billion users per month on YouTube. And I don't know about you, but if I want to know anything, like how to plumb a new toilet into my bathroom, I go straight onto YouTube, and there's a guy there'll give me a 10-minute course on how to do it. So whatever you want to know, just about, it's on YouTube these days. So some little personal encounters. Kathy was the director of learning at a global company. I'm not allowed to mention their name, but they produce payment systems around the world, electronic payments. And Kathy engaged me and some of my colleagues to put the people in the driver's seat of their careers, 24,000 staff. And we had to make it so that within a year, they were in control of their own careers. So instead of managers doing it to them and telling them when there was a course or when they could be promoted, people worked it out for themselves and their managers became facilitators of their careers. Fergus Hamilton is a friend of the family, and he's making AI work in schools. And basically what Fergus does is he uses artificial intelligence to help, particularly with young people whose learning might be different to others for whatever reason, because of specialisms or being on the spectrum or anything like that. Then Fergus and his company makes AI work for them. That's Century Tech. And I said I'd go back to this photograph this time to focus in on the man in the white at the bottom there, because I thought it would be good to catch up with him, seeing as it was 2015 that we worked with that youth workshop at the United Nations. I caught up with Fedi again to say, what are you up to now? I mean, did you really get to all the young people in the world with the SDGs, and what are you doing? And he was now living in Colombia, and he wanted to do something practical because I think it was his niece was having real severe breathing difficulties because of air pollution, and he wanted to make the city's air pollution cleaner. So he started a business to convert combustion engines to electric vehicles, and he wanted to get that business off the ground and found that there were no accelerator hubs available in the country to help him do that. So basically what he did was he set up his own accelerator hub. And again, I interviewed him. The story's on my YouTube channel. And the final aspiration, you'll be pleased to know, wisdom. I'm only going to put this table on. All this is showing this because we're living longer, there are actually potentially more wise people on the planet than ever before. And some of them I interviewed and talked to, and they're featuring in the book. Phil Clothier and Tor Inneroth, they have an encounter for each of them, and they've set up a company, and that's a book, Growing a Culture for Sustainability. I wrote the foreword for it, and they're doing amazing things to manage the cultures of organizations around the world. Again, another American, wonderful man, Bob Anderson. He's the founder of a company called the Leadership Circle. I'm a practitioner of that diagnostic. And I had a conversation with him about wisdom, a fabulous conversation. Again, it's on my YouTube channel. And he talks about how with wisdom, we can have a new and thriving planetary future. And the key to it, the words in the second paragraph, I am not separate, but one with the inherent unity of all things. If you want to know more, you'll have to look at the YouTube channel or read the book. And finally, my last personal encounter is my mum. I mentioned her earlier on, 96. This is her in the front seat of my camper van. And when I want wisdom, that's where I go. So one of the other things that I talk about in the books is the different characters that are at play. I'm not going to go into this too much today just because of the time. If any of you ask questions, perhaps we can come back to it. But the point is, we have this complex mix of different characters who are all working for or against the brighter future that we want. And the tendency that we have is to stay within our like-minded people. And what the book encourages is you to get out and talk to the others, because that's the way we get aligned. So just thinking about this, let's have another poll and go back to Slido. It should still be open on your phones, or point it at the QR code there. Think about who you are in all of this and just vote for the characters that you think you are out of that list. You know, I would only go for something like 3 or 4 of them at the most, I would think, but just vote in, and it won't update till I press the button, but just have a vote. So I think I'm probably an optimistic facilitator, connector, encourager, or something like that. What are you? And by the way, there are more. You have to page down on your screen to see them all, and make sure you hit submit when you've identified them. Let a few of you get your votes in. Let's see if we've got any coming in. We've got a few coming in. And I haven't voted, I hasten to add, so there's a lot of other optimists out there other than me. Fantastic. We've got a mix. Well, Bill did say we've got people from all different departments here tonight. So it's great that we've got this mix of people. And, whoops, we go back to that. What I'm trying to do is get the bar there on the right-hand side and scroll down. So we don't have any apathists or deniers. We've got maybe one saboteur. Perhaps they can tell us about it in the mix there when we do questions. But look at all these wonderful people: facilitators, connectors, specialists, explorers. Fantastic. So I'm very conscious of the time, Bill, and I know you wanted questions. Let me just quickly show you this model. This is a model that really is a model of the book that I wrote, first of all, Designing the Purposeful Organization. And the point being here is that alignment is fractal. In the early days of my work, I was trying to get organizations aligned to purpose and making the point that you have to create 8 conditions, and it's the 8 conditions on the screen there: purpose, vision, engagement, structure, character, results, success, and talent. What we've got with Leading Beyond Sustainability is we've got a common purpose of creating a brighter future, and we've got a vision of 6 aspirations. So it's up to us to put the other conditions in. So, open forum. What a gallop that was. Have a think. What is your most profound insight or question? Maybe what will you do differently? Do you have any feedback? And if so, go to the Slido, which again, the QR code's there if you wish. And let's see if we've got any questions coming in.
Let me encourage students to, maybe rather than the chat, put the questions into the Slido. That will work just fine.
I'm just looking to see if I get the results on the screen or whether they're just... No, there's no questions in. So I think we just go to the chat, Bill.
Well, we can do that as well. Let me see.
There's some there as well.
It just took them a while to type it in, that's all.
Yeah, it does take a bit longer. It's a lot easier to click on an option, isn't it? But so with COVID having slow progress in the SDGs, you feel 2030 is overly optimistic. Do you know what? So my take on this, and I'm greatly influenced by the work of Rethink X and Adam Dawes' book Brighter, but the changes in technology will ramp up significantly in the coming decades. And so the move to renewable energy, autonomous vehicles, and all the other things that go on, we will see a massive increase. Now, whether we hit net zero at 2030 or 2050, I think is doubtful. It's a little bit like me when I have an illness or a condition with my body. It takes me a few years and a bit of suffering for me to sort it out. But I eventually get round to losing that stone of weight that I ought to lose, or whatever it is that I need to do. And when the pain is sufficient, we take the action that we need. So my sense is we will get to net zero at some point in the coming 20 or 30 years. The earlier, the better. The longer it takes, the more pain we will suffer. The more floods, the more fires, the greater the rise in sea levels, the more we will have populations and migration going on, and potentially even wars over scarce resources. The quicker we get on with it, the better it will be. So if you are in the business at all of slowing down climate change, making the world a healthier place, then ramp it up, do your best efforts as quick as you can, and encourage others. If you see others working on that, then fantastic. With COVID having slow progress in the SDGs, you feel 2030 again is overly optimistic. COVID was a mixed bag, wasn't it? I mean, it took millions of lives around the world, which is a sadness and something to feel compassion for in any case. And on the other side of the coin, it forced so much acceleration in technology. Would we have been doing this and having this polling software had it not been for COVID? I know that I had to rapidly ramp up my skills in online lecturing and webinars when COVID hit. So again, I think things happen, things slow us down, and things speed us up, and we will have to pick up the pace. And I believe we are picking up the pace. Who gets to determine what the future look like? What is on the chopping block when it comes to making decisions? That's an absolutely fantastic question, Ben. And what I'd like to say here, this is what I was discussing before we started the recording when Bill and Jane and I were having a conversation, is that it's a complex system that makes the world a brighter place, makes the world a better place. And the way it works is this: all of us, all 9 billion people on the planet, want to make the world a brighter place. That's my absolute belief. Whether it's young children, whether it's people in the workforce, whether it's people with ailments in their families, whatever it is, they all want a brighter future. And the way it works is this: there was some research done by a guy, Bruce Lipton. He did some work on stem cells, and he discovered that if you place a stem cell in a petri dish, with one solution you get heart tissue, with another solution you get lung tissue. What happens is the life form picks up its purpose from the environment it's placed in, and it's the same with all of us. What we do with our lives is a function of who we think we are. Our values, our abilities, skills, the things we care about, and how we see the world. So if you think about that, if we see the world, let's, for example, and we see that, everybody, we've got climate change sorted. We haven't, but if we did, then maybe we wouldn't go into a career to try and do something about climate change. But if we see, as millions of people are doing, that that's a real challenge that needs accelerating, guess what? There will be people like many of you on the call today taking up some form of environmentalism as your careers, because it's going to be in demand and it's so necessary. And I applaud you all. So, who gets to determine what the future looks like? We do. As an interconnected humanity, thinking as one unity consciousness, we will sort this out. If I could pick one goal, what would you think is most important? Wow. Well, I'm going to go for the overarching one, which is a brighter future. I'm just going to put it there, and it does comprise the six aspirations, which envelops all of the sustainable development goals. There's another answer, which is wisdom, which you don't see explicitly in the sustainable development goals, but I think that's a thread running through them all, to the extent that there's a part of the book comprising a couple of chapters which will be called the Wisdom Code, to help people accelerate their growth of wisdom. And then we've got another anonymous: what is the most meaningful intervention you've been a part of with Prime East? Wow. What makes it difficult to talk to people that are stuck in their ways? That is, I don't know who has said it, it's anonymous, but whoever did say it, it is a really, really good question. I hope how long have we got, Bill?
I think we still have about 12 minutes.
12 minutes. Well, let me really try and answer that. Let me start with the second part of that question first. What makes it difficult to talk to people that are stuck in their ways? If you go back to the 12 characters that I said were at play in this road to a brighter future, you may have noticed that there were 9 green ones, an amber one, and 2 red ones. And the amber one was the apathist, the people who just don't see it coming. What's that going to do with me? I don't want to know. I've got more important things to think about. And then you've got the saboteurs, for example, who actively have got a a vested interest in something else, and they're trying to have a completely different view, to preserve their interests in, let's say, an outdated technology that's really on its way out. And these are big forces in the world. So my encouragement is we should be talking to these people, just as the optimists should be talking with the innovators to try and encourage them and make things happen. We should also be talking with people that have got different views. I've learned so much by simply going online and listening to videos from people who, want to preserve industries that are perhaps not serving us as much as they might be, and just listening to their words. A lot of what they say makes sense. And it's being able to engage in that conversation that listens compassionately to what they have to say, and to also try and find the opportunity to speak with intelligence to them. And in doing so, we understand them, we change our arguments, and they, perhaps some of them, move a little bit closer to our views. Either way, it's about alignment. It's that picture that I showed you earlier on, which, in fact, I'll go back to. If we go back to there, this is about alignment. It's about getting us all somewhat aligned to a common purpose. This happens between people and teams and organizations and the whole world. So just as if you're running a global business, you want people and teams that are aligned to the corporate purpose, so you also want in the world people and organizations who are aligned to a common purpose of delivering a brighter future. They'll all see it differently. They'll all have their own part to play in that, but by understanding the whole and understanding what else is going on in the world, we get there. And the more we do that, the quicker we will get there. And that's my belief. So I'm tempted, Bill, to stop sharing the screen. I don't know what you think.
That's fine. You still have more questions to address, or not sharing the screen is fine if you can still see questions.
I don't know whether there are any more on there, but let's stop the share and go to the chat and see what's in there.
Okay. Well,
So,
I think they took my suggestion to heart, and they only put questions in the Slido this time. I don't see anything in the chat.
Oh, well, the only thing, there was one thing in chat. It was you were saying that we have 35 minutes before
Well, there was that.
the next obligation.
That was a while ago.
So let's just open it up then. Feel free to raise your hand on Zoom or unmute yourself and ask a question.
Okay. Any students out there who'd like to submit their question if it didn't get answered before?
I'll make that offer to you as well, Bill, if there's anything while they're thinking that you'd like to ask. Or Jane, that's absolutely fine.
Well, there's Ben. Ben, did you want to ask something? Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I can ask. That's okay. I was going to ask you about how you thought you used leadership throughout your transition from, it seemed like you used to work in electrical and now you're very much more into an environmental or sustainability based career. So how did that
work out?
Yeah.
So what it was, Ben, it's a great question, and at the risk of telling you my life story, the first 27 years of my career were in the electricity industry in the United Kingdom. I started off as a mains engineer, so I was in charge of gangs laying underground cables, building overhead lines and substations. I moved into health and safety, and then in the 1990s the industry was privatized, so it went into public ownership. Private ownership, and so it was in the hands of shareholders, and that involved a massive change in the industry. And I was in charge of a program that was to bring competition into electricity metering, and my program was audited, and the auditors said, "Well, you're a typical engineer. You're doing all those technical things really well, processes, technology, organizations, all those sort of left brain activities, but you're not attending to the culture." And funnily enough, by coincidence, I've just done a dissertation for a master's degree in values and behaviors at the workplace. So I got really interested in what the the auditors were saying. And I went to the States, to Detroit, actually, to a company called Human Synergistics to become accredited to measure cultures using their diagnostics. And we used it in the electricity industry to change the culture. And then on the turn of the century, literally, when that work was done, I thought the world needs this. So I went into a private practice. I set up my own business. In 2002, Prime East recruited me to become their managing director. So I took on board that company. It kind of gave me a shortcut to what I was trying to make. They were already there, and I had the privilege of leading them for a while. And Prime East was actually founded in '87, long before I was involved, but their roots were in team development in the outdoors, so a lot of experiential learning. But one thing led to another, and they became a global consultancy doing leadership, teamwork, change management, and so on. And over the last 20 odd years, I've just had a fabulous career with fabulous colleagues and fabulous clients. Managed to travel the world and do all sorts of interventions, mainly to help organizations and senior leadership teams embrace the challenges of the future, and to understand that if you want to make changes, the way you lead is really important. And so, again, I do a lot of coaching with leaders, mainly to help them think about who they are and how they lead so that they can take their organizations in a helpful direction. Does that answer the question, Ben? Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think one of the themes here is that particularly as young people, they're trying to organize their lives both on a personal level and a potential professional level to align with their values. Where do you see some of the best opportunities, maybe for young people looking for professional careers, to have a meaningful make a meaningful contribution in some of these areas?
Bill, did I share with you that I wrote a book during lockdown called Leading a Purposeful Life?
You did send that to me. I can share
I
that.
sent it to you.
Yes.
So well, the answers are all in there, in my opinion. So by all means, share that with
I will share the book.
The people on the call. Send it throughout the whole university. It's my gift. But basically, what that book says, and I think I did touch on it a little earlier on, is that the way to have a successful, purposeful career is, first of all, to work out who you are. You know, what do you care about? What are you good at? What have you already achieved? What are your ambitions? What are your values? And the book takes you through a number of activities that might help you work that out. And then to think about the world that you live in. Again, what do you care about? How do you see that world? Do you see it as a threatening place of fear, or do you see it as a world of opportunity? Think about, do you want to work globally? Do you want to travel? Do you want to work in an office? All those things. And when you start putting those two energies, because that's what they are, when you put them together, you get an energetic reaction. You actually get a feeling. And in that feeling, it lies the secret to your career. Because if you work out how you feel and you follow your heart, then you will go in a helpful direction. I mean, just to bring that alive.
As long as somebody will pay you for it, right?
Well, I was just going to come on to that. And yes, that matters, but don't let money be the driving force. I've got 5 kids for my sins, and 2 of them are musicians. And I know many parents that have said to their musical kids, you need to do maths, you need to do English, you've got to get yourself a career in accounting or medicine or something like that. Anyway, we encouraged our kids to follow their hearts, and they went into music. And I don't know whether you guys know of Andrew Lloyd Webber. He's certainly got a few shows on Broadway. And my son works to support Andrew. He's his creative musical director or something like that. But he basically arranges and makes Andrew's music come to life in the musicals. And my daughter plays flute for the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. And they've had a hard journey to those careers, but they've never given up and they've never stopped trying. And it's because they've followed their hearts. And I would encourage all of you to do that. And particularly in terms of making the world a brighter place, whether you do it through music or art or science or technology, just make it happen, and put yourself, this is key as well, put yourself in the place where it's all happening. So, if you want to be a climate change scientist, go to the climate change conferences, go to the places where climate change is really hitting the world and making the world difficult. Talk to the people who are affected. Talk to the organizations who are, making a difference to people in renewable energy. There are a thousand, if not a million, ways that we can all help with the climate crisis. And it's about doing your own bit personally and through your careers.
Thank you so much. I think we probably do have some students now that are on to their next obligations. We book them pretty solid around here. So thank you all for being here. Clive, thank you. I just really appreciate your time and your insights today. So thank you so much.
It's been my absolute privilege. Jane's got her hand up. Is that just a waving
I'm
hand?
just clapping. It's just like a clapping. Thank
I
you.
thought it was a question. Well, bless you all, and I wish you every success for the road ahead. Thank you for having me on.
Great.